never looked at gender as an obstacle or a thing or anything.
And it turns out I accidentally started an international peer group for women in leadership in the boardroom.
A lot of people feel very uncomfortable with change, but change was necessary. There was no other way to survive.
I think the resistance was to change, to higher expectations, to wanting people to come to board meetings prepared without representing all the material.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Adrian.
Oh, I'm so happy this finally came to fruition. I've been so excited to do this interview with you. And I know you are very passionate about family businesses, which I love. I'm also in a family business, which we'll chat about in a moment. But first and foremost, I would love for the audience who doesn't know you, I am just in awe of your story, but I would love to hear how you sort of started your journey. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Sure. Well, none of what I'm doing today is ever what I thought I would be doing before. So anybody who feels lost, know that you will be found someday. You just may not find yourself where you think you will be. But I currently work for Ideal Industries. It's a 107-year-old family-owned business. And we're a global manufacturing company in the electrical and infrastructure space. So we're kind of really two distinct businesses and with a global footprint. But I started my career in family business really at the dining room table. My father was CEO and chairman for most of when I was growing up. And so I felt that Ideal was the sibling around the table that I always had to compete for with my other siblings for time and attention and, focus. And, based on some of the family dynamics that I grew up with in our family business, my full intention was to never work for Ideal. That was my big plan because, when I was growing up, it was a small Midwestern manufacturing company and, with 35, 40 family members, all of whom were super passionate, very opinionated, and, really saw things in a lot of different directions. And so I didn't, just didn't feel like there was a place for me to contribute. So I started by thinking I would never do this. And so ended up, circuitously ended up working for one of the big 5 consulting firms. And, did that for about 5 years and realized, I'd gotten married during that 5 years. We both, my husband and I, wanted a family. And I realized that there were no women working at this consulting firm between the ages of like 35 and 40. I mean, they're just, if you wanted to have a family, it was almost impossible. They hadn't figured out job sharing, remote work. You were at a different location every week, possibly. So my big plan was to stay home for my first year with my son, and I ended up getting a call with, I think maybe I had a 1 month old or something, and my father was chairman at the time and called and asked if I'd like to work on this one tiny little project.
And one tiny little project.
I just was like this small little thing, and I was like, of course, yes, because I enjoy working. I also just wanted to be present with my son, and so ended up being able to do both. And I've been doing it now for my son just turned 21 yesterday.
Oh, so I've been doing happy birthday! That's why I knew where this was going. That's why when you said the tiny little project, I'm like, Yep. It always starts with that, right? But wow. And the fact that I think you and I had chatted about this before, that I was the first female in North America to own a private investigation agency. So going into a very male dominated, industry as yourself as well, or a non-traditional space. So many women today and future leaders and entrepreneurs and founders are doing the same thing. And I love how you started off the podcast by saying, wherever you think you're going, just be open. It might not be there. And it feels like just, if you are open to whatever that may be, I think that's the best way to be. But how did you deal with it for the first 5 years? But also, I think in the business you're in is predominantly non-traditional space. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, I mean, it's certainly not. So the consulting firm I worked with, they hired men and women equally. It's just that women didn't stay in the workplace. So there were a lot of, senior managers who were male, or there were a lot of, female senior managers who kind of, left and came back, or didn't have children. But I felt like that was a very egalitarian place to work. I felt like gender wasn't really, didn't really play a big part in that. Sometimes, there is the thing of like, men cannot hear what a woman says, so someone else, unless another guy says it, and then, but, so there's a little bit of that, but very, very, very little. And in fact, I never, and even in the family business, which, even in the boardroom, I really did not feel like there were any major issues with kind of gender or leadership until I got the top spot, until I got the board chair role.
Okay,
and then there was some weird gender dynamics, weird things I was not expecting, because I really, in my entire career, I've been working, 20, 25, 30 years, and for really gender to not have played, much in that 30 years, and then all of a sudden to have it kind of show up, I was really unprepared. I'd always considered myself team member, collaborator, person, and never really.
Human. Yeah. And
never really kind of,
Oh, no, go ahead. I think we've got a slight lag. I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just was saying, I never really had kind of felt that gender was the thing that I led with. It was more kind of team member, and, diverse perspectives and insights, of course, but, not really gender specifically.
But the funny thing is, what you say is you did not see it that way. It's not necessarily how everybody else saw it. And it's funny because I think you and I are very much alike that way, where I never looked at gender as an obstacle or a thing or anything in my choices in my life. I always tell people, whoever that will listen, is that I do what I love and love what I do. So I never let gender hold me back. But did you experience things throughout your life? Girls can do this and boys can do that. 100%. And then as you grow up, and you don't really, to me, the messaging never got through, because again, I didn't really listen to that outside voice, but it definitely plays a part throughout. And so once you realized, and once you were in, let's just call it a top management scenario, what changed? What do you believe changed for everyone else around you? We'll talk about your feelings in a minute, but why did they see you differently? Do you believe? I mean, maybe you know, maybe you don't know.
This is just a hypothesis, but I think that, well, put it this way, I was named board chair in February of 2020, which those were the golden days, right? It was like pre-COVID. I had two weeks, essentially. I've been vice chair 2 years prior, so I kind of, and I've been in the boardroom since 2008, so I kind of knew the drill. But during the pandemic, what we needed from the board was completely different than what the board had been bringing to the table prior. And I think the resistance was to change, to higher expectations, to wanting people to come to board meetings prepared without representing all the materials. I changed the rules on them, and I didn't change them unrealistically to, it is exactly what one would expect from a director, but it was higher expectations than what had been, what had been kind of demanded of them before, and it was no longer kind of that easy payday that they may have been getting or gotten used to. It was, they were going to have to work for it.
I think what you're saying is there was change, innovation needed to happen, there was shift, and you actually really probably stepped into this leadership role. I mean, hats off to you and kudos to you for doing what you've done so far and having to pivot and having to shift and having to save, hundreds of jobs and clients and whatever the case may be with what you did with that shift and innovation. But it was a necessary must, right? And sometimes it's almost like being a parent. I think it's like you're going to make unpopular decisions and you're going to not be able to please everybody. But that sort of is the leadership role. I mean, again, delivered in a respectful manner, with expectations that are achievable and obtainable. I think that's what a leader needs to do. So you feel like when you sort of put on that different hat, that's when things change for everybody else or their perception of you.
I
Again,
think
it's a
so.
hypothesis. I get
That's
it,
my
but
guess. Yeah, that's my guess. I really think that they liked it the way it was. It was comfortable.
mm,
There wasn't being much asked of them. There's good money, and when we just in my mind we just couldn't go on like that anymore. I also there were some dynamics where I did actually have a director who really wanted my job. Not a
oh,
family member. It was a not family member, and I think he was just quite uncomfortable with not being kind of the most important person in the room, and made a couple plays for it. Got some other directors, kind of he kind of colluded with them to try to support me by him doing my job and allowing me, the role in name only. That just, I mean, that was also, I found very confusing, why elect me unanimously and then kind of undermine me. I didn't get it.
mm,
But I want to be clear. Nobody in that environment felt like they were doing the perfect A+ job, let alone someone who'd been at the job for 2 weeks. Like, it was very, very challenging. I've learned a lot since then.
of course.
Um,
I
but
mean,
one of the
it's times like I'm going to let you continue, but I'm saying it's times like that nobody knew what to do, right? I think everybody was sort of, I don't give the C word a whole lot of attention, but looking back and hearing your stories, I get the goosebumps because such change and pivot had to happen. And a lot of people and a lot of humans, I think it's almost natural. I talk about, being uncomfortable. A lot of people feel very uncomfortable with change, but
yeah.
change was necessary. There was no other way to survive, right? Because the world as we knew it had changed so drastically. So you really had to step up and be this amazing rock star leader that was going to make some people uncomfortable and that was going to make some maybe uncomfortable choices or asks of people. But did it work out? I'm sure it had bumps, bruises, hiccups, but it sounds like it really worked out.
It really worked out. I mean, we've really gone through a major board transformation. The management, put it this way, the management relies on the board for input and new ideas. We have dialogue where we're strategic. We've made some enough major changes that the board really truly has been transformed. And we moved four directors out in the first 2 years, and we're in the process of rebuilding our board with very, very high caliber people, all of whom who have the right culture, values, and incredible expertise. So I don't, although it was a hard road, I don't regret it. But one thing I just wanted to call out, because I know there's a lot of people who've ended up, in those crux moments of like, so much tension and pressure, and things are not going well, and it's confusing. They're like, what's going on around you? It's very confusing. And so one of the things that I've learned is that most women in these senior leadership roles don't have peers. They don't know one another. They're not connected with one another. There may be other, and in fact, I had a lot of other male peers who were board chairs, and I would talk to them about what's going on, and they could not relate at all. Very unique situation, but also I think because of the gender roles that were at play, So what I did was find peers, and I thought I was starting a peer group, or I thought I was starting a quarterly call with a couple other women who were board chairs, and it turns out I accidentally started an international peer group for women in leadership in the boardroom.
I know, and I love that.
But it was but that, I'm telling you, was one of the most rewarding, meaningful, bright spots of my whole life, because these women, I've learned so much from them. We can lean on each other, we can learn from one another, and everybody who's in that room is there to help, share our own lessons learned and learn from others. And it's just like kind of this building up. There's no competition. There's nothing other than just celebration and striving to be great.
And I love that. And you can talk a little bit more about that. I know our time is very limited, but 2 or 3 things that I just want to touch on, which you brought to my attention. And this is where exactly I am with I Am Unbreakable. And it really is about elevating and empowering other women. And like you said, for me, to have that network of individuals that, like you said, you can go to, you can speak with, they don't have to be, everybody thinks they have to be in the same industry. And it's so not true, because everybody's sort of in the same position, doing the best they can. Their struggles and their obstacles are just that. Their struggles and obstacles. They don't have to be exact. You can definitely share in many different ways of how to deal with things and whatnot, but it's really a personal thing and a personal growth. And that's why I love your story so much. And please, tell us a little bit more about the name and whatnot. But it is what is born from passion that I think is the most rewarding, especially for women. And that's why I love your story. So tell us the name and sort of what you're doing and what's going to be for tomorrow regarding your passion project.
The group is called the Lotus Forum. It's LODIS Forum, thelotusforum.com. And where we do we're a virtual peer group. We meet 11 times a year around various topics, and we really try to support women both in the role of the leadership role that they're in the boardroom. So how to be, how do you think about facilitation? How do you think about the topics at hand? How are you putting together a great agenda? So kind of the nuts and bolts. And then we also try to really educate all of our members on what's coming up on the board agenda or in committee agenda that really everybody needs to understand, and they need to know how to put a good oversight program together. So we do a lot of education around ESG, DE&I, AI now, which was not on our list last year, on our list this year. And so it keeps evolving. We do a lot of education around cyber risk, etc. So those are items that are just kind of big items that everybody needs to have a very strong handle on, and also be able to put together strong oversight programs with.
That is
and then we do an in-person conference every year, and people can reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I can get you connected on our website.
And I'll also include it in the description. When is the conference?
It is. It's in October, 24th and 25th, I think, but don't hold me to that. I think that's when it is. I'd have to look it up.
You've got what's going on. We'll include it all in the description. Good. But that must be very personally fulfilling for you to be able to sort of pay it forward. And that's the way a lot of women like yourself, myself, and people that are empowering and lifting others, like there's a lot of lip service to that, but what are you really doing to do that, right? And awards, accolades, all of that is beautiful and wonderful, but you're sort of doing, what we're doing as well is the grassroots stuff, and kind of really getting into the weeds where you can see where people might struggle. And I think there's such a need for that, and it's so incredibly valuable. What is the feedback? Is that sort of the feedback that you get from your members and your folks that are in the Lotus group?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Sorry.
I was just speaking with somebody today who said that, you know, she's basically now putting together her board, and it's allowed her, you know, with the business, given the economy and the industry she's in, she's been really struggling, and she was worried about bringing in a board to show, you know, to, and like kind of look behind the curtain at how challenging things are, and what she found with that level of vulnerability. And she gave the Lotus Forum credit for giving her kind of the courage and the tools to do it. But she basically said, you know, the minute she allowed herself to be vulnerable with the board and bring this board together, she like all of a sudden the burden was lifted. Everyone's taking a little piece and supporting her. They all reassuring her, we've all been there before. You know, this is not a personal failing. This is, you know, a economic situation. Here's ways to navigate it. And so I think, you know, what she found was that, you know, that speaks, you know, searching for that authenticity and vulnerability, which is a lot of kind of what we are in the Lotus Forum, has just made it possible for her to kind of seek this help, and has been just kind of this weight lifted off her shoulders. So I just thought that was such a powerful story.
I
even
love
just
that.
Today.
And you know, it's those success stories. Doesn't matter how big or how small they are. I think that's where you draw, like you said, the most important thing that you've done. And obviously you've done a lot, but it sounds like that's really where your passion is whether it's paying it forward or just supporting, educating, and helping others. And what a beautiful legacy, and what a beautiful thing that you're doing. I know time is, you know, coming up to having to say goodbye to you. Unfortunately, we're going to have you back again. I have two quick questions before we end. And one of them is, what does it mean to you to be unbreakable? So when you think of the word I am unbreakable, or the phrase, what does that mean to you?
Honestly, in my mind, it doesn't mean that. I think to me, it really brings to mind this concept of resilience. It doesn't mean that you do not bend under the weight. You do, but you have that very deep well of resilience, and knowing that, you know, whatever is happening, you know, that you'll get through. A little outrage thrown in also really helps.
Oh yes.
So that's kind of what it reminds me of.
I love that. And I'll tell you, everybody sort of gets stumped on that, because it's something you've really got to think about, because you know the whole unbreakable is, you know, resilience, and it is, you know, however you perceive it to be. But I love the fact that you took a moment just to think, that's a good question, because, you know, some people think, well, I don't break, so I'm not unbreak, you know. And like you said, I love how you're saying about the bending part. We all go through things. We all go through obstacles. And then you have the Lotus Forum and different other groups of women that are just willing to support and lift and stand beside you in these times. So to end, I would just like to ask you, can you share anything that is new and up and coming? You kind of said a little bit something about AI. What is next for you? And is there something you can share with us? Because you've got a lot going on.
I've been kind of a side project. I can't even believe I have a side project. So my side project these days is working with two other incredible women on a international study of women in leadership and family business, and really looking at, you know, how are they getting into leadership? What are they experiencing once they're in there? And so we'll be launching a survey this year, hoping to get, you know, several hundred responses, and then a book. I don't know.
You're like, maybe.
Maybe. Certainly.
I love that.
Yeah, we did oral interviews last year, and presented a paper at the Family Firm Institute, which is an international family business conference, and we got a lot of really great, feedback and responses, and it was pretty revelatory. So
I love
uh,
that, and very necessary. So let us know
yes,
when it is. We'll put it out to
yes,
our community
thank
and would
you.
love to continue to support you. And good luck with everything. And you're like, I don't even believe I have like a side thing. I don't know how you find the time, but you know what they say? They say that all the time. If you need something done, ask the busiest person you know, and they'll
It's
find a
so
way.
true.
So
So true.
thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining us. I so
Adrian. Thank you
appreciate
so much
you.
for your
We'll
work.
see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye.